Exodus 18, and I will be reading from the NIV version. Now Jethro, the priest of Midian and father-in-law of Moses, heard everything God had done for Moses and for his people Israel, and how the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. After Moses had sent away his wife, Zipporah, his father-in-law Jethro received her and her two sons. One son was named Gershom, for Moses said, I have become an alien in a foreign land. And the other was named Eliezer, for he said, my father God was my helper. He saved me from the sword of Pharaoh. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, together with Moses' sons and wives, came to him in the desert, where he was camped near the mountain of God. Jethro had sent word to him, I, your father-in-law Jethro, am coming to you and your wife and your two sons. So Moses went out to meet his father-in-law and bowed down and kissed him. They greeted each other and then went to the tent. Moses told his father-in-law about everything the Lord had done to Pharaoh and the Egyptians for Israel's sake, and about all the hardships they had met along the way, and how the Lord had saved them. Jethro was delighted to hear about all the good things the Lord had done for Israel in rescuing them from the hand of the Egyptians. He said, praise be to the Lord, who rescued you from the hand of the Egyptians and Pharaoh, and who rescued the people from the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all other gods, for he did to those who had treated Israel arrogantly. Then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, brought a burnt offering and other sacrifices to God, and Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to eat bread with Moses, his father-in-law, in the presence of God. The next day, Moses took his seat to serve as judge for the people, and they stood around him from morning till evening. When his father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for his people, he said, what is this you are doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge while all the people stand around you from morning till evening? Moses answered him, because the people come to seek God's will. Whenever they have a dispute, it is brought to me, and I decide between the parties and inform them of God's decrees and laws. Moses' father-in-law replied, what are you doing is not good. You and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. The work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone. Listen now to me, and I will give you some advice. You may be, and may God be with you. You must be the people's representative, because God, in regular disputes to him, teach them the decrees and laws and show them the ways to live and the duties they are to perform. But select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Have them serve as judges for the people at all times, but have them bring every difficult case to you. The simple cases they can decide themselves. That will make your load lighter, because they will share it with you. If you do this, and God so commands, you will be able to stand the strain, and all these people will go home satisfied. Moses listened to his father-in-law and did everything he said. He chose capable men from all of Israel and made them leaders of the people, officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. They served as judges for the people at all times. Difficult cases they brought to Moses, but the simpler ones they decided themselves. And Moses sent his father-in-law on his way, and Jethro returned to his own country. Now here's Mark with our message.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It's good to be back with you. Good to hear how God is working in your midst. Randall sure enjoys spending time with you and fellowshipping with you, and I like hearing what God has been doing. I'm wondering if you would just join me in a quick word of prayer as we listen to what God might have for us today. Would you pray with me, please? God, I ask that this story of Jethro visiting Moses and the worship that they brought to you in praise for what you were doing would rest deepen our hearts, that it would influence our thoughts, that we would be open to a message from you today. And it's in Christ's name we pray. Amen. A newsletter article is going to go out for a church that's one of our clients. And I'm going to just summarize it. I thought it was really quite funny how it was worded, so I just want to share a little bit of what it says. It says in essence this, that change is really a pain. Some of you are like, no, it's not. I love change. Oh, yes. Now, change is a pain. It's hard. It comes at us so fast. And about our only alternative to that is to try to control the universe so that it doesn't change. It's like, in essence, to say, I'll be God. So, there are times that I don't like what's happening, like when my grandchildren move 300 miles away, and that kind of, I don't like that. So, I'll try to control everything and make everybody do my bidding. I'll just be Jehovah. And then I realized I'd be a very lousy Jehovah. Probably worse than you, but you wouldn't be a very good God either. And that's in essence what the note said. That we really aren't in control of things. All we can do really is decide how we'll respond to what happens. We can decide how we will be. We can take control of ourselves, but we really can't control the circumstances. We can't control the culture. We can't control the political atmosphere. All that is beyond our capacity. So what we can do is worship God, do what we can with ourselves, and choose our responses. And in this story, Moses is in a similar kind of moment where he has an awful lot of power. He has a lot of things that he could try to control, but it's getting out of his control. Just think for a moment, the last time you went to an amusement park and you gave into the craziness and you're standing in line to get your tickets and you're standing in line for the next ride and the next ride and you're going, why in the world do we even do this? Right? Especially on a hot day in July, and it's a 45-minute to take a 30-second little ride in spinny teacups that are just going to make you sick anyway. Right? We don't like that. So imagine standing in line to try and have a dispute settled out in the hot desert. You're not going to build up a groundswell of support and love for leaders in that kind of a moment. So Moses is having to fight this desire to try and control everything, and that's when his father-in-law comes to see him. Where Moses is stuck is that he has to get out of having solo perspective, of thinking that he is the only one that has anything to say about what happens. Now, some of you think of your bosses at work and jobs that you've had or do have as people like that, who think that they can control everything. But truth be known, we think we can control everything too in certain places of our life. Maybe it's our family. Maybe it's the farm that we own, or the business that we have, or the classroom that we have, or the way we want to care for our children. We just want them to march in step to the cadence that we set, and that we don't want to have anybody ask us any questions about what it is that we know. Life would be easier if people just left me alone. That's a solo perspective. Moses had to fight giving in to thinking that he was the only one that had anything to say. And when that happens, a person becomes isolated. And I don't mean that they become alone, like no one's around them. It means that they are sort of separate from everybody. They're on the highest chair, or they're in this isolated place. They're in this office with the door closed. Moses had to fight that kind of isolation where he couldn't receive counsel from anyone. And he had a problem with trust, because who could he give the responsibility to? Now, he had Miriam, his sister, he had Aaron, his brother, who were helping him. And as you read further into the story of Exodus, you discover pretty quickly that they were not going to be his successors, and for very good reasons. They were kind of manipulative, and Aaron was able to be manipulated, and there were just a number of things that made them not very qualified to be Moses' successor. But he was going to have to find somebody who to trust, who to try. In my work, I get to do a lot with searches for executives and for pastors of congregations and those kinds of things. And one of the phrases that we say is, if you're ever going to find a successor, you have to kiss a lot of frogs. You have to kiss a lot of frogs, and a lot of them do not turn into princesses and princes, but that's the only way you're ever going to find who you need and who's the right person is by taking a risk. Because the only other alternative is that you find no one and it all shuts down. So you got to get into frog kissing and just embrace that as a part of the dynamic. You'll meet people who don't really qualify, who don't match up well, but that's the only way you can do this work. And Moses had to deal with all of these things at this moment in his leadership, and here comes his father-in-law, who seems to be the right person at the right place, at the right time, with the right kind of input. And I just want to talk about that a little bit. We could talk about all kinds of things from this story, how to structure things, what it means to find other leaders, a number of dynamics. I just get enamored with Jethro and how he operates in this place and in this story. Now, Jethro, we're told, was a priest, much like Moses was. Moses had actually been trained probably by priests in Egypt because they were the educated class of that time. And Jethro exercises the office of a priest out there in this desert with the peoples that lived there. So they knew something about what it meant to try and interact with God and to lead access to God for people who wanted to worship God. So they had a similar kind of life that way. Jethro also knew this particular desert very well. He lived there. He was a leader among the people there. He knew what it took to help people survive and to make it and to raise their families and to weather the storms and the weather, the terrible heat and the dry climate. He knew what that took. So he had some particular insight for this geography. And even more, he had been Moses' business partner and mentor as sheep herders and goat herders for 40 years. And along the way, he also became his father-in-law. So Jethro had a particular interest in Moses' success because he had a wife, or a daughter, Moses' wife, and grandsons who were a part of this family. So this was not about I'm the honored as much as it was I need to help my descendants prosper and have a life. So this man knew Moses, had been a trusted advisor for Moses, had provided for Moses, and was one who had earned Moses' ear. Right person, right place, right time, right kind of perspective. The person who could understand what it was like to have to sit in Moses' chair and offer perspective. And I hope you can understand this. Let me try to put it in a context that some of you might appreciate. Because some of you operate heavy equipment or you run a farm. Just a couple of examples, okay? I've never done either one of those things. So wouldn't it be silly for me to stand beside you and tell you to do it this way? Or what if you tried it that way? Or couldn't you just... I might give you good advice, but you wouldn't be saying, oh, this is a person who understands, right? Jethro understood what this was like for Moses. And Moses could look at Jethro and say, if there's anybody that understands what I'm facing, Jethro does. And so we hear what Jethro's advice was to create a bit of an open system rather than a closed one. And so I brought some beautiful artwork today to show you what this is about. Nobody's laughing yet, but you will. Sometimes diagrams help. Sometimes they don't. I'm going to turn this so everybody can see it. These are simple little diagrams. This is what we call a closed system. This looks like a lot of organizational charts that you maybe have seen before of congregations or businesses or whatever. And believe me, I'm not going to go to some deep academic place with this. Just a couple of illustrations. But in this kind of a thing, what we sometimes call a fountain type of an organization, you have somebody like Moses clear here at the top. And what they're doing is they're dispensing expertise and content down to the layers down below where the people are. And maybe there's some leaders of people here or whatever else. Well, these folks actually provide the assets to make this person be able to do their work. So if we were McDonald's, we'd be producing money and assets would be coming in. We'd be sending them off to the corporate office who'd be telling us how to do things. When to cook the food, how long to cook the food, how long to store it before we throw it away. All of those kinds of things. That's what we call a fountain. So the assets flow up and the content and the expertise flows down and out. in this kind of an organization, it's closed, it's for itself, and there's a lot of authority from the top flowing down this way while all the goods are flowing up to the top. This is not how churches of the brethren want to be organized. Right? In fact, in the 1950s and on, a lot of U.S. institutions and cultures changed and said, we're not going to do this. People need to have more say. People need to be involved. We don't want somebody at the top that just says this is how it is. We need to hear everyone. And one of the things that you've done as a congregation, I've been at some of the board meetings, of course, with you, is that you have an open meeting. So people can be there and have a say, and you don't want to proceed much until other people have a say, because you don't want some dictator or autocrat at the top. This is how it will be. Right? This is a moment you can say, Amen. All right. So here's what happens, is we create a different kind of a closed system. This I call the dwarf star. What do we know about dwarf stars? Nothing escapes. Everything goes into the center, pulls it all in. So in this kind of an organization, everybody has a say. Everybody, as an individual, if we're not careful, can become an autocrat, a dictator. So all it takes is one person to say, I don't like it, and it all stops. All the assets flow in, all the expertise flows in, content comes in to the center. But because it's such a tight and dense structure, very little comes out. Very little comes out. So we end up saying, well, it's not working. Let's appoint another committee. That committee's not working. We need to have a review committee for the committee that's the committee of the committees. And we end up with all of these layers and layers of structure, packing it in, making it more dense, consuming time and people's talent. And what begins to happen is folks say, I can't find a place in here. I can't get anything done. And so the real work then in a dwarf star system happens over here to the side. It happens behind our hands when we're talking to somebody else. It happens at the coffee shop. It happens informally out in somebody's driveway, because it's not going to happen at the meeting. We can't get it done there. So we got to figure it out to the side and hope that people don't get mad at us for actually getting something done. And if somebody does get mad at us for getting something done, that serves them right. I'm never going to help again. I'm out of here. No, I'm not preaching at you. I'm just describing, okay? This is what happens when we don't want dictators. We make everybody a dictator. And nothing gets done. You can't move. And here's one last little problem with this. We struggle because we want to be effective in mission. We get in our hearts, if we have a Christian discipleship commitment at all, and we read something like the Great Commission, go into all the world and preach the gospel, baptize, make disciples of every nation, teach them everything I've commanded you, and lo, I'm with you always, even to the ends of the world. These kinds of things we want to do, but we can't move in that direction when we're stuck and we're just going round and round. So really what Jethro is proposing to Moses is what you would call an open system rather than a closed one. And up here, at the top of this kind of structure, you do have leadership, but it's more of a governance. And in governance, you're saying, here's the boundaries. Here's where we start. Here's where we stop. Here's our mission. Here's our vision. Here's our values. And that's where the role stops. It's not, you will do this on Monday, you'll do this on Wednesday, and you can't do this, and you can't do that. It's much more, who are we? And how will we make our decisions? What are the values that have to be there? And then begin to move it down and out so that people and expertise and content and assets can flow in and out. You can borrow something from somewhere else. You can send someone to somewhere else. So, when a Mexico Church of the Brethren says, well, Randall and Mark, would you give us some assistance during this interim time? You're moving to an open system. You're saying, let's bring in some people and some expertise. Let's use some of our assets to help us move forward towards mission effectiveness. And that's what Jethro's saying. Let's get other people involved. Let's push it down and out. And let's empower people instead of suck them in. Let's give them the capacity to carry the work, and let's provide the structure for them to do the work. So it doesn't matter whether it's a formal committee or a chair out here in the driveway or a couple of people yakking. Work gets done regardless, as long as it fits inside what we've identified as our values, and it moves us forward to where we've identified God is calling us. And so it kind of takes some of the walls down. It allows for a lot of creativity and adaptation. We figure out who's responsible for things. I'm going to get this. You have a Christian education committee, right? Some kind? Okay. So why does there have to be a second Christian education committee? There doesn't have to be. You have a finance committee, right? So why can't the finance committee take care of the money? You have a fellowship committee. Why can't they take care of those things and give the leadership as opposed to having to double and triple and quadruple loop, which means then they're really not a committee. They're just talking about it and they can't really do it. And so what we're after is just how can we move that flow out and empower people to do the work so that we're actually supporting people rather than taking from them. Helping to foster their gifts rather than consuming them to where they don't want to serve anymore. And that's really what Jethro was after. Moses, if you keep going this way, you are going to be not just a dictator. All of this is going to melt away. They're going to go and follow somebody else. They won't be able to have access to you. It's all going to implode. Now, let me return to change just a little bit and talk about something that starts to feel a little more practical. This is not where we want to spend a lot of time, is it? Because then we're not talking about living the Christian life, we're not talking about loving our families, we're not talking about being someone who's a good Samaritan to the neighbor, we're not feeding the hungry, we're not caring for the orphan and the widow. We want this to work so well that we hardly have to think about it. We don't have to give a lot of time to it. So that's really why I'm pushing at that, but that means a little bit of change. And as we make those kinds of changes, we have to recognize that change on the whole is a pretty good thing rather than something to hate. Now some of you might consider yourself a person who has permission to be grouchy about changes. And no matter how much you resist it, I just want to point out that change has brought a lot of good things to your life. Things like durable buttons. How about a better quality of denim? How about glasses that don't glare in your eyes and blind you every time light shines in just a certain way? One of the real innovations that I love in my life is a good Whirlybird popcorn popper. Those are good things. They come to us. I couldn't have invented them. But because someone else's gift and expertise is available to me, the quality of my life improves. How about a toaster oven that doesn't make my electric bill go up so much? That's a good thing. There are many of those things we can point to. It's all a matter of what I choose to see. But here's the thing. One of the reasons why Jethro could be so trusted by Moses wasn't just what was done in the past. It was what was being done in the moment. Jethro coming, and instead of saying, I've got advice for you, saying, tell me the story. Let me hear the updates. Let me know. There's a period of fellowship, of meal sharing. And they even spend time in worship together before they start moving into what adjustment, what advice might I give. Underneath all of that is a relationship of trust. And trust starts with that kind of time and mutual interest and mutual concern. So as we work together in these next months, and you appoint a search committee, and we look at what you want to do financially as a congregation, to live within your means, and just a number of those kinds of things, we have to have meals together. And we have to have worship together. And we need to communicate in two directions so that your story is something you feel is heard, my story is something that I feel is heard, Randall's story is something he feels is heard, so that we're not doing this as outsider working with insiders. We're doing it as a family, as a group of people who care about the future of this congregation as a place that honors God and loves neighbor until the Lord returns. Now, I want to try to get to this one more way, if you'll let me. I have a daughter, and I have a son. They're both married. And their spouses, between the four of them, all have better capacity to perceive things than I do. My daughter has a sense of taste that when she bites into something, she can tell you everything that went into that dish. I can't do that. When she describes it, I go, yeah, let me take another bite because I can't taste that. I have to really concentrate. My mind, my perception does not go there. I have to trust what she's telling me. Because sometimes she tastes things I can't taste. And I have challenged her before. I said, I don't believe you. And I asked the server if it's at a restaurant or the person who made the dish. And they said, of course that's in there. Why did you have this without that? I can't taste it. But she has proven time and time again, she has information and expertise I don't have. My son has something like 25 or 20/10 vision. It's really crazy. I was talking with Rick about this yesterday. This year he shot a deer from several hundred yards away through the elbow of a tree limb. Took it down. Because he could see what people around him couldn't see. My daughter-in-law has a capacity with vision. She's an artist, does a lot of graphic art. She does a lot of photography. She was at our house a couple of weeks ago working on a printer to try and get a canvas to print correctly. So a photograph of a family on a canvas. She was frustrated. She had 3 or 4 examples. She spread them out on the table and said, Mark, look at this. This doesn't work, and this doesn't work, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. And I'm thinking, man, I'll put a frame on that and hang it in my office. This really looks good. She was upset, not losing it, just this is not right. She says, I'm going to go try one more thing. Half an hour later, up she comes out of the basement where this big printer is that we have that makes these kinds of prints. And she says, look at that. And you know, as soon as she turned around, I could see everything that she'd been after. I couldn't see it until she showed me. But as soon as she did her around, man, you could see every strand of hair, the colors pop. There was a contrast that was not present in the other ones that she could see. Last week, we went to a tent sale for Allen Edmonds Shoe Company. I don't know if you know Allen Edmonds. They're a U.S. manufacturer shoes. They do high-end shoes. My son-in-law recrafts shoes for them. So he's in the factory, and men and women send their shoes in to be resold, recrafted, restained. He works on those things. So the first time I'd ever been to this sale, and he's walking through, and he's showing me how they put these shoes together, and helping me. It was very important to him that I would buy a pair of shoes, if I bought one, that would be well crafted. So he's got his little flashlight down in there, and he's looking to make sure the stitches are just right. No bad shoes for this father-in-law. But he would see things and see flaws and see seconds and stuff that I would never have spotted. And probably still cannot, because I don't have that practiced eye. I have to trust that those who have gone that way, those who have developed the expertise, can be of an assistance to the system, because there's no way I can control all the facets of my life. But I have to have trust. I have to have that time spent in worship and fellowship in order to keep those relationships strong. So that really is the challenge here for us. Not just to say, can we accept the advice, but can we be a Jethro for other people? Can we learn to bring wisdom and perspective in a way that does not force, that does not demand, and actually allows those coming after us to make their mistakes? Can we be willing to kiss frogs? Would you pray with me, please? God, there's a challenge in front of us today from this text. To be people who look forward and look ahead and bless those that we are raising up and training up and give them opportunity, even if they would fail. Lord, I'm reminded how it's out of this process where Jethro advises Moses that Korah's rebellion comes, that Aaron leads the problem with the golden calf, that there is grumbling about food and water. There are so many more problems that come because so many more people now have their voice. And yet, God, it is out of this that you raised up Joshua and Caleb that might not have been found otherwise. Lord, help us to throw open the door to the future, to flexibility, to your call for our lives, for our family, for the places that we work, and for this congregation. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I'm remiss on 2 counts. I'll be very, very quick. One is that my wife, Lori, asked me to convey her thanks, our thanks, for prayers and cards that have been sent our way. She had a very, very difficult last 3 weeks. She is a little better at the moment, but it's not a great season for her, so we're very appreciative of the support that you've shown us. And then the other is, this is my own fault, I forgot to say anything about the surveys for the congregational assessment or evaluation. A number of you have filled those out. If you would please do that soon. If you're having any trouble at all accessing that computer-wise, I'll be around for a minute. Let me know. We'll see if we can get you an updated link to make that work. I know a number of you have been able to do that. And I know that some of you are doing it in paper as well. But this is a very important part of the process. It's a way of working with an open system. So we want to have that perspective before we take any next steps. Now, would you receive this benediction before you are closing the song? May the Lord rescue you from every evil, and may the Lord bring you safely to His kingdom. To God be glory forever and ever. Amen.